Gate 12 at Savannah International Airport smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. A woman in wrinkled nurse scrubs sat rigid against the terminal wall, a white neck brace cutting into her jaw, while 50 feet away a man in a $1,000 suit watched her with the dead-eyed focus of a predator counting seconds. Her name was Aaron Caldwell. His name was Gavin Rourke. 3 weeks ago, he shoved her into a concrete pillar in an empty parking garage. 2 weeks ago, he told the world she was unstable, a thief, a liar. 1 week ago, he made sure she couldn't find work anywhere in the state. And now he was on her flight. Not chasing, waiting. She had nowhere left to run, until she saw the silver-haired man in navy dress blues sitting by the window and remembered the one silent signal her father taught her before he died. If this story shocks you, follow it to the very end. Like this video and comment with your city so I can see how far this truth has traveled. Erin's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She'd wrapped them around a paper cup of lukewarm tea 20 minutes ago, but the tremor had only worsened. The white foam brace dug into her collarbone with every breath, a constant scrape that kept her from forgetting what happened in the Harborline Medical Center executive garage 3 weeks ago. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed like trapped wasps. Gate 12 was half full. Business travelers tapping laptops, a young couple sharing earbuds, an elderly man dozing against his carry-on. Normal people living normal lives. Aaron wasn't normal anymore. Across the seating area, Gavin Rourke sat with his legs crossed, scrolling through his phone like he owned the oxygen in the room. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, his tie a muted burgundy that screamed power without shouting. His hair was salt and pepper, his jawline sharp, his smile practiced to the millimeter. He looked like every CEO profile photo ever printed in a healthcare magazine. Trustworthy. Visionary. Compassionate. Erin knew better. She'd seen what was under the smile. Her ticket was in her lap, crumpled from being gripped too hard. Flight 447 to Charlotte. One way. She'd bought it with the last $400 in her checking account after her apartment landlord told her, politely, apologetically, that the lease wouldn't be renewed. No reason given. Just a sympathetic look and a manila envelope with 30 days' notice. Erin had stopped asking why things were happening. She knew why. Gavin Rourke had reached into every corner of her life and squeezed. She'd lost her job at Harborline Medical 2 weeks ago, terminated for cause. The official reason was theft of hospital property and unprofessional conduct. The real reason was that she'd found the emails, the altered patient logs, the discharge orders signed off at 2 a.m. when no doctor was on duty, the incident reports that disappeared from the system 12 hours after being filed. She'd printed everything, and she'd made the mistake of confronting Rourke alone. The memory came back in flashes, the way trauma always did. The parking garage, level 3, dim overhead lights, her car 20 feet away. Rourke's voice behind her, smooth and cold. "Erin, we need to talk." She'd turned. He'd smiled. Then his hand was on her shoulder, shoving her backward into the concrete support pillar so hard her vision whited out. The impact had cracked something in her neck, not broken, the ER doctor said later, but strained, soft tissue damage, whiplash. She'd worn the brace ever since. Rourke had leaned in close, his breath mint-sharp. "You'll never work in healthcare again. Do you understand me?" "Never." She'd tried to speak. He'd walked away. 2 days later, the hospital's PR team released a statement. Aaron Caldwell, a former nurse at Harborline Medical Center, was no longer employed due to serious policy violations. The hospital took patient safety seriously and had a zero-tolerance policy for misconduct. Her phone exploded. Friends stopped answering. Colleagues she'd worked beside for 6 years avoided her in grocery stores. Her nursing license was flagged for review, nothing official, just a quiet investigation that meant no one would hire her while it was pending. Gavin Rourke had weaponized his reputation. And it worked. Erin shifted in her seat, the brace digging deeper. She glanced at Rourke again. He was still scrolling, utterly calm. He hadn't looked at her once since she'd sat down, but she could feel his awareness like static electricity. He knew exactly where she was. He always did. She didn't know how he'd found out about the flight. Maybe he had someone monitoring her credit card. Maybe he'd bribed someone at the ticket counter. Maybe he had access to systems she didn't even know existed. It didn't matter. He was here. And in 90 minutes, they'd be trapped together in a metal tube at 30,000 feet. Her throat tightened. She couldn't get on that plane, but she couldn't afford to miss it either. Charlotte was the only city left where she had a friend who'd still take her calls, an old nursing school roommate who'd offered her a couch and a chance to regroup. If she didn't get on this flight, she had nowhere to go. No money, no plan. She was out of moves. The gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin boarding for Flight 447 to Charlotte in approximately 10 minutes. We'll start with our first-class passengers and anyone needing additional time. Erin's pulse spiked. She forced herself to breathe slowly, the way her father had taught her during her first panic attack in high school. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. Repeat. He'd been a Navy corpsman, calm under pressure, the kind of man who could stitch a wound while mortars fell and never flinch. He died of a heart attack when she was 23, 2 weeks before her nursing school graduation. She wished he were here now. Her eyes drifted across the gate area, searching for something, anything that might help. A security guard, a friendly face. An exit she hadn't noticed. That's when she saw him. Sitting near the window, partially obscured by a structural column, was a man in his early 60s wearing a navy dress blue uniform. The jacket was pristine, the ribbons on his chest arranged in perfect rows. Silver eagles gleamed on his shoulders. His hair was steel gray, cut military short, and his posture was ramrod straight even while seated. He was reading a newspaper, an actual paper newspaper, with the kind of focused attention that suggested he wasn't just passing time. Erin's breath caught. An admiral. She didn't know his name, didn't recognize his face, but the rank was unmistakable. Her father had shown her the insignia 100 times, quizzing her until she could identify every officer rank in every branch from across a room. The admiral turned a page, his movements precise. Erin's mind raced. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, clear as glass. If you're ever in real trouble, Erin, the kind where you can't speak, can't ask for help out loud, you give the signal, silent, subtle. Any military officer worth their salt will recognize it. He'd shown her the gesture once, just once. A small, specific motion with the hand. Not a wave, not a salute. Something older. Something that predated radios and encrypted channels. A distress signal from the days when sailors needed to communicate across distances without words. She'd never used it. She'd never needed to. Until now. Erin's hands were still shaking, but her decision crystallized with sudden, terrifying clarity. She had no legal proof that would hold up in the next 10 minutes. No lawyer. No witness who'd risk their career to back her up. No evidence that a gate agent or TSA officer would take seriously. But she had the signal, and she had one chance. The intercom crackled again. We'd like to begin pre-boarding for Flight 447. If you need additional time or assistance, please come to the gate now. Rourke stood. He stretched slightly, rolling his shoulders, then picked up his leather briefcase and moved toward the boarding line with the unhurried confidence of someone who'd already won. He didn't look at Erin. He didn't need to. Erin's pulse hammered in her ears. The Admiral was still reading. She stood slowly, pain lancing through her neck. The brace felt like a vice. She took one step toward the window, then another. Her vision tunneled. The terminal noise faded to white static. She stopped 10 feet from the Admiral. He didn't look up. Erin raised her right hand, slowly, deliberately. She extended her thumb and pinky while folding the middle 3 fingers against her palm. Then she brought her hand to her chest, just below her collarbone, and held it there. 3 seconds. No more. The newspaper stopped moving. The Admiral's eyes flicked up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his gaze locked onto hers with the kind of intensity that could crack steel. He folded the newspaper in one smooth motion, set it on the seat beside him, and stood. His face revealed nothing. No alarm, no confusion, just absolute focus. He walked toward her. Erin's knees nearly buckled. The Admiral stopped 2 feet away, his voice low and firm. Don't move. Don't say anything yet. He turned toward the gate agent, his tone shifting into something that wasn't loud but carried the weight of unquestionable authority. Excuse me. I need security here immediately. The gate agent blinked. Sir, is there a problem? Yes. Call your supervisor and airport police. Now. The agent's hand went to her phone. Rourke's head snapped around. He was halfway through the boarding line, but his eyes found Aaron instantly. His expression didn't change, but something flickered behind it. Calculation, recalibration. He stepped out of the line and walked toward them, his smile sliding into place like a mask. Aaron, he said, his voice warm and concerned, pitched just loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. Are you all right? We've all been so worried about you. The Admiral stepped between them. Not aggressive, not confrontational, just a wall of dress blues and unshakable presence. Rourke stopped. His smile thinned. I'm sorry, but this is a private matter. Erin is a former employee and she's been under a great deal of stress. I'm just trying to make sure she gets the help she needs. The Admiral's expression didn't flicker. Step back. It wasn't a request. Rourke's jaw tightened. I don't think you understand. I understand perfectly. The Admiral's voice was quiet, lethal. Step back and wait for security. 2 airport police officers appeared at the gate entrance, hands resting near their belts. The gate agent was speaking rapidly into her phone. Passengers were starting to stare, phones lifting. Rourke's mask slipped for half a second, just long enough for Aaron to see the cold fury underneath. Then it snapped back into place. He raised his hand slightly, the picture of calm reason. Of course. I'm happy to cooperate, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. One of the officers stepped forward, a young woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. Sir, we're going to need you to step over here for a moment. Rourke's smile stayed fixed. Certainly. Though I should mention I'm the CEO of Harborline Medical Center. I'm scheduled to speak at a healthcare conference in Charlotte this evening. I'm sure we can clear this up quickly. The officer's expression didn't change. Over here, please. Erin's vision swam. The Admiral's hand appeared at her elbow, steadying her. His voice was low, meant only for her. Breathe. You're safe now. Do you have evidence? Erin's hand went to her throat. Hanging from a thin chain around her neck, hidden under her shirt, was a small USB drive. She'd worn it like a dog tag for 3 weeks, terrified to leave it anywhere Rourke might find it. She pulled it free, the chain breaking easily. The Admiral took it without a word and turned to the senior officer, a sergeant with graying temples. This woman is a witness in a potential criminal matter. She has documentation. The sergeant's eyes narrowed. What kind of documentation? Healthcare fraud. Witness intimidation? Assault. Rourke laughed, short, incredulous. This is absurd. Erin has been making wild accusations for weeks. She was terminated for stealing hospital files and displaying erratic behavior. This is exactly what I was afraid of. The sergeant looked at Erin. Ma'am, is that true? Erin's voice came out as a rasp. He attacked me. The terminal seemed to hold its breath. Rourke's face went very still. That's a serious allegation, and completely false. Erin, I know you're upset about losing your job, but you shoved me into a concrete pillar in the parking garage. Erin's voice was shaking, but it was getting stronger. You threatened me. You told me I'd never work again, and then you made sure I couldn't. Phones were definitely recording now. The sergeant glanced at the Admiral, then at the USB drive in his hand. Sir, I'm going to need you to come with us as well, ma'am. We'll sort this out at the security office. She needs a psychiatric evaluation, Rourke said, his voice smooth. I'm genuinely concerned for her welfare. She's been under an enormous amount of stress and, sir, the sergeant's tone hardened. You're going to stop talking now. The second officer moved to Rourke's side, not touching him, not restraining him, just present. Rourke's smile finally died. The sergeant turned to the gate agent. We're going to need to delay this flight. The agent nodded, already reaching for the microphone. Erin's legs gave out. The Admiral caught her before she hit the floor, lowering her into a nearby seat. His voice was calm, clinical. She's in shock. Get a medic. Erin's vision blurred. She was dimly aware of the sergeant speaking into his radio, of passengers being ushered back from the gate, of Rourke's voice rising in protest before being cut off. The USB drive was still in the Admiral's hand. "Can you open it?" Aaron whispered. The Admiral looked at the sergeant. "Do you have a laptop?" 5 minutes later, they were in a small security office behind the gate area. Aaron sat in a plastic chair, a bottle of water in her hands. The Admiral stood to her right, silent and immovable. Rourke was in a separate room, his voice audible through the thin walls, alternating between indignation and thinly veiled threats about lawsuits. The sergeant plugged the USB drive into a department-issue laptop. The screen flickered to life. Folders appeared, dozens of them. Emails, spreadsheets, scanned incident reports, patient discharge summaries with timestamps that didn't match the official records, medication logs with entire entries deleted and rewritten, a memo from Rourke to the chief financial officer discussing optimizing bed turnover and managing liability exposure. The sergeant scrolled slowly, his expression hardening with every click. He opened an email chain. From Gavin Rourke. To Dr. Sandra Voss, Chief Medical Officer. Subject: Patient 4. 721. Readmission Sandra. We've discussed this. Early discharge protocols are hospital policy. If the patient returned with complications, that's a separate admission and separate billing. The incident report citing premature discharge needs to be amended or removed. This is a pattern I won't tolerate. The sergeant opened another file, a spreadsheet tracking patient complaints. Next to each complaint was a column labeled Resolution. Most were marked Closed, No Action. Several had notes like Staff Counseled or Family Appeased. 3 were marked File Removed, GR Approval. The sergeant looked at Aaron. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 2 years," Aaron said. Maybe longer. I only found the files 3 weeks ago. I was covering a shift in the ICU and noticed a patient had been discharged at 2 in the morning with chest pain still unresolved. I pulled the chart. The discharge order was signed by a doctor who wasn't even on duty. When I went to file an incident report, I couldn't access the system. It kept kicking me out. So I asked IT, and they said my access had been restricted. Restricted by who? Administration. The sergeant scrolled further. He stopped on a PDF. It was a scanned letter on Harborline Medical Center letterhead, dated 4 months ago. To Georgia State Board of Nursing. Aaron Caldwell, RN license number 47,821. We are writing to inform the Board of Concerns regarding Ms. Caldwell's conduct and clinical judgment. Recent incidents suggest a pattern of erratic behavior and potential substance use. We recommend a formal review of her licensure status. The letter was signed by Gavin Rourke. Aaron stared at it. "I never saw that." "They sent it directly to the board," the sergeant said quietly. "Bypassed you entirely." "Is that legal?" "It's a gray area, but it's definitely malicious." He looked at the Admiral. "You know what you're looking at here?" The Admiral nodded. "Retaliation, witness intimidation, possibly criminal fraud if the billing records tie to this." The sergeant closed the laptop. "I'm calling in a detective." He stepped out. Aaron and the Admiral were alone. "Took an oath a long time ago that didn't took an oath a long time ago that didn't come with an expiration date." "I don't even know your name." "Rear Admiral James Collier, retired." He paused. "Your father was Navy?" Aaron nodded. "Corpsman. He died 11 years ago." "He taught you well." Aaron's throat tightened. "I didn't think it would work." "It worked." Collier's voice was firm. "And now you're going to see it through." The door opened. A woman in plain clothes stepped in, late 40s, dark hair pulled back, a detective's badge clipped to her belt. Her eyes went straight to the laptop. "Sergeant Patterson filled me in," she said. "I'm Detective Marissa Grant. I work financial crimes and healthcare fraud." She looked at Aaron. "You're the whistleblower?" "I'm the nurse who got fired for it," Aaron said. Grant sat down, opened the laptop, and started clicking through files. Her face remained neutral, but her jaw tightened with each new document. She opened the billing records, cross-referenced them with the discharge summaries, pulled up a separate database on her phone. After 10 minutes, she looked up. "This isn't just internal misconduct," Grant said. "This is federal. If these discharge codes were submitted to Medicare and Medicaid for reimbursement, And if the timestamps were altered to justify those codes, that's wire fraud. That's healthcare fraud. That's a felony. Erin felt something crack open in her chest. Not relief, not yet, but the first thin edge of it. Grant kept scrolling. She stopped on a file labeled Personnel, Confidential. Inside were performance reviews. Erin's name was on half of them. Each one had been rewritten. Original comments praising her clinical skills had been replaced with vague criticisms. Struggles with teamwork. Difficulty accepting feedback. Concerns about judgment. The edits were dated 3 weeks ago. Right after Erin confronted Rourke, Grant's expression went cold. He tried to rewrite history. He did rewrite it, Erin said. Everyone believes him. Not anymore. Grant stood and opened the door. She spoke to someone in the hallway, short, clipped sentences. Then she came back in. We're holding Rourke for questioning. I'm also going to need a full statement from you, and I'm going to need you to walk me through every file on this drive. This is going to take hours, maybe days. Erin nodded. I'll do whatever you need. Grant's expression softened, just slightly. You did the hard part already. You kept the evidence. You stayed alive. Now let us do our job. The sergeant reappeared in the doorway. Detective, Rourke's lawyer just arrived. Grant smiled, thin and sharp. Good. Let him sit. She turned back to Erin. I'm also going to make a call to the State Board of Nursing. That letter Rourke sent was defamatory and retaliatory. You're going to get your license cleared. Erin's vision blurred. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get worse before it gets better. Rourke has money and connections. He's going to fight. Admiral Collier spoke for the first time in minutes. Then he'll lose. Grant looked at him, surprised. You sound certain. I am. Collier's voice was quiet, absolute. Because the truth doesn't negotiate. Grant studied him for a moment, then nodded. Stay close, Admiral. I might need a character witness. Collier didn't smile. I'm not going anywhere. The next 3 hours were a blur. Erin sat in the security office and walked Detective Grant through every file, every email, every altered log, every patient name. Grant took notes in a leather-bound notebook, her handwriting fast and precise. She asked clarifying questions, cross-referenced dates, flagged documents for further investigation. At one point, Grant's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked at Erin. The State Board just confirmed they received Rourke's letter. They also confirmed they never contacted you about it. It was sitting in a pending file, waiting for someone to follow up. Would they have? Erin asked. Eventually, but by then, Rourke would have had months to build a narrative. Grant's jaw tightened. He was playing the long game. What happens now? Now we flip the board. Grant made another call. Erin couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Grant's tone was brisk, professional, uncompromising. When she hung up, she looked at Erin with something close to satisfaction. Federal agents are executing a search warrant at Harborline Medical Center within the hour. They're seizing servers, financial records, personnel files. Everything. Erin's breath caught. That fast? Healthcare fraud moves fast when there's evidence this clean. Grant leaned back. You handed us a roadmap, Ms. Caldwell. Most whistleblowers come in with fragments. You came in with the whole picture. I just printed what I found, and that's going to save lives. Erin's hands were still shaking, but for the first time in 3 weeks, it wasn't from fear. It was from the weight of what she'd just set in motion. Grant closed her notebook. I'm going to need you to stay in Savannah for the next few days. We'll have more questions, and you'll probably need to testify in front of a grand jury. I don't have anywhere to stay, Erin admitted. I was supposed to be on a flight to Charlotte. Grant glanced at Admiral Collier, who'd been standing silently by the door. He nodded once. I'll make arrangements, Collier said. She'll have a safe place. Grant didn't question it. She just handed Erin a business card. Call me if you think of anything else, or if anyone contacts you, especially Rourke. Is he under arrest? Not yet, but he's not leaving this airport until I say so. Erin exhaled slowly. Grant stood. You did good, Ms. Caldwell. I know it doesn't feel like it yet, but you did. She left. Erin and Admiral Collier were alone again. Collier moved to the chair across from her and sat, his posture still military straight. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know," Aaron said honestly. "I keep waiting for this to fall apart." "It won't." "How do you know?" "Because you have the truth, and because people are watching now." Collier's gaze was steady. "Rourke's power came from operating in the shadows. You just turned the lights on." Aaron looked down at her hands. The tremor was still there, but fainter. "My father used to say that," she said quietly, "that the truth was like a floodlight. Once you turn it on, the rats scatter." Collier smiled just slightly. "Your father was a smart man." "He was a good man." "So are you." Aaron's throat tightened. "I'm not sure I believe that yet." "You will." The door opened again. Sergeant Patterson stepped in, his expression unreadable. "Ms. Caldwell, there's someone here asking to speak with you." Aaron tensed. "Who?" "A nurse from Harborline. She says her name is Lila Pruitt." Aaron's heart skipped. Lila was one of the ICU nurses. Young, sharp, terrified of administration. They'd worked the same shifts for 2 years, but Lila had stopped answering Aaron's texts the day after she was fired. "What does she want?" Aaron asked. Patterson's expression softened. "She says she has more evidence, and she wants to go on the record." Aaron stared at him. "She's not the only one," Patterson continued. "We've had 3 more calls in the last hour. Staff from Harborline. They saw the police activity. They're coming forward." Aaron's vision blurred. The silence was breaking. Admiral Collier stood. "Let them in." Lila Pruitt looked like she hadn't slept in days. She stood in the doorway of the security office, her scrubs rumpled, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her eyes red-rimmed and darting. She was 26, maybe 27, with the kind of nervous energy that came from too much caffeine and too many night shifts. Aaron had trained her during her first week in the ICU 2 years ago. Back then, Lila had been eager, optimistic, the kind of nurse who still believed the system worked. Now she looked haunted. Sergeant Patterson stepped aside, and Lila walked in slowly, her gaze finding Aaron immediately. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lila's face crumpled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Aaron stood, her legs unsteady. "Lila, I should have said something. I should have backed you up. I knew what happened, and I just—" Lila's voice broke. "I was scared." "It's okay." "It's not." Lila wiped her eyes roughly. "They told us you were stealing files, that you were having a breakdown. And I knew it was bullshit, but I didn't say anything because I thought if I kept my head down, they'd leave me alone." Detective Grant stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Miss Pruitt, I'm Detective Marissa Grant. You said you have evidence?" Lila nodded, fumbling with her backpack. She pulled out a worn notebook, the kind nurses carried for shift notes, and a folded piece of paper. Her hands were shaking. "I kept copies," Lila said. "Not of everything, just the stuff I saw myself. Patients discharged too early, orders that didn't make sense. Incident reports I filed that disappeared." Grant took the notebook carefully. "Why did you keep these?" "Because I didn't trust them." Lila's voice hardened. "Rourke came to our unit 3 months ago and told us we needed to improve our efficiency metrics. He said patients were staying too long, that we were costing the hospital money. He made it sound like we were the problem." "What happened after that?" Grant asked. "Discharge orders started coming faster. Patients who should have stayed another day were being sent home. We'd push back and administration would override us. One time, a woman with unstable blood pressure got sent home at midnight because her insurance wouldn't cover another day. She came back 6 hours later in full cardiac arrest." Lila's voice cracked. "We coded her for 40 minutes. She didn't make it." The room went silent. Grant's pen hovered over her notebook. "Did you file a report?" "I tried. The system wouldn't let me submit it. I went to my supervisor and she told me it was already being handled." Lila's eyes filled again. 2 weeks later, I checked the patient's chart. The discharge time had been changed. Instead of midnight, it said 8 in the morning, and the death was coded as unrelated to hospital care. Aaron felt something cold settle in her chest. Grant wrote quickly. "Do you remember the patient's name?" "Margaret Hines. She was 72. Grant underlined the name. "Anyone else?" Lila nodded. At least 6 others in the last 3 months. I wrote them all down. She handed over the folded paper. Grant opened it. 6 names, 6 dates, 6 brief descriptions. A man with post-surgical complications sent home too early. A diabetic woman whose insulin regimen was changed without proper monitoring. A stroke patient discharged before physical therapy cleared him. All of them had been readmitted. 3 of them had died. Grant's jaw tightened. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because I saw what happened to Aaron. Lila looked at Aaron, her expression raw. They destroyed you. And I thought if I just kept quiet, maybe I could keep my job, pay my loans, stay safe. But then I saw the police at the hospital today, and I realized I was part of it. By staying silent, I was helping them. Admiral Collier spoke quietly from the corner. You're helping now. Lila turned to him, seeming to notice him for the first time. She blinked at the uniform, the insignia, then looked back at Grant. What's going to happen? You're going to give me a full statement, Grant said. Every detail, every name, every patient, and then I'm going to build a case that makes sure this never happens again. Lila nodded, tears streaming down her face. Grant glanced at Sergeant Patterson. Set her up in the conference room. Get her water, coffee, whatever she needs. This is going to take a while. Patterson guided Lila out. Grant turned to Aaron. You knew about these deaths? I suspected, Aaron said, but I didn't have proof. I tried to pull patient outcome data from the system, but my access was blocked. Rourke blocked it? Someone in administration did. I assumed it was him. Grant flipped through her notes. If these deaths are connected to fraudulent discharge coding, that elevates this from financial crime to manslaughter. Maybe worse. Aaron's stomach turned. Grant's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up sharply. Federal agents just arrived at Harborline. They're meeting resistance from hospital security. What kind of resistance? Collier asked. The kind that means someone's trying to destroy evidence. Grant was already moving toward the door. I need to go. Stay here. Don't leave this airport until I clear it. She was gone before Aaron could respond. The silence that followed felt heavy. Aaron sank back into the chair, her hands pressed to her face. The neck brace dug into her jaw, a constant reminder of Rourke's hand on her shoulder, the concrete pillar, the moment everything had shattered. Collier sat down across from her. You holding up? I don't know. Aaron's voice was muffled. I keep thinking about those patients. Margaret Hines, the others. If I'd acted sooner. You acted as soon as you had evidence, Collier said firmly. You didn't cause their deaths. Rourke did. But I worked there. I saw the patterns. I should have. You did. Collier's tone left no room for argument. You risked everything to stop it. That's more than most people would do. Aaron lowered her hands. What if it's not enough? It will be. She wanted to believe him. The door opened again. Sergeant Patterson stepped in, his expression grim. 2 more nurses just showed up, one from the ER, one from post-op. They're both asking to speak with Detective Grant. Aaron's breath caught. Who are they? Names are Claire Whitman and Jordan Hayes. You know them? Aaron nodded slowly. Claire was an ER veteran, 15 years on the floor, tough as nails. Jordan was quieter, methodical, the kind of nurse who triple-checked everything. Both of them had stopped talking to Aaron after she was fired. Let them in, Collier said. Patterson hesitated. Detective Grant said, she said to keep Ms. Caldwell safe. These people are witnesses, not threats. Collier's voice was calm, but it carried weight. Let them in. Patterson nodded and disappeared. Claire Whitman entered first. She was in her early 40s, stocky and blunt-featured, with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that came from too many traumas and not enough support. She looked at Aaron, and her face softened. Christ, Aaron, you look like hell. Aaron almost laughed. Thanks, Claire. I mean it. Claire crossed the room and sat down heavily. I heard what happened at the gate. Rourke's losing his mind in the other room. Good. Jordan Hayes followed, younger and slighter, with dark skin and close-cropped hair. He stayed near the door, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Why are you here? Aaron asked. Because we saw the feds roll into Harborline an hour ago, Claire said. And because I'm done pretending I don't know what's been happening. Jordan spoke quietly. We all knew. We just didn't want to admit it. Claire pulled out her phone and opened a photo. She handed it to Aaron. It was a screenshot of an email from Rourke to the ER department head. Subject: reduce hold times. Immediate action required. Patients are spending too long in the ER without admission or discharge. This impacts our metrics and reimbursement rates. Effective immediately, all patients must be dispositioned within 4 hours of triage. No exceptions. If a patient cannot be admitted, they must be discharged with outpatient follow-up instructions. Aaron stared at it. 4 hours? For everyone, Chites, Claire said. Chest pain, abdominal trauma, strokes, didn't matter. If we couldn't get them a bed in 4 hours, we had to send them home. That's insane. That's Rourke. Claire's voice was bitter. I pushed back. My supervisor told me to comply or find another job, so I complied. And 3 weeks ago, a man came in with what looked like indigestion. I wanted to keep him for observation, but we were over the 4-hour mark. I discharged him with antacids and a follow-up appointment. Her voice cracked. He had a heart attack in the parking lot. Died before the ambulance got there. Aaron's chest tightened. Jordan spoke again, his voice flat. I had a patient in post-op, gallbladder removal. Simple procedure, but her vitals were unstable, low blood pressure, elevated heart rate. I flagged it. The attending wanted to keep her overnight. Rourke's office called and said we needed the bed for a higher acuity patient. They moved her to outpatient recovery and discharged her 6 hours later. What happened? Collier asked. Internal bleeding. She collapsed at home. Her husband called 911, but by the time they got her back to us, she'd lost too much blood. We couldn't save her. Jordan's jaw tightened. Her name was Amy Brennan. She was 34. She had 2 kids. The room was silent. Claire looked at Aaron. We should have backed you up. We should have said something when they fired you. But we were scared, and now people are dead because we stayed quiet. You're here now, Aaron said. It's not enough. It has to be. Admiral Collier stood. You have documentation? Claire nodded. Emails, shift notes, patient charts I printed before they could be altered. Jordan pulled a flash drive from his pocket. I pulled discharge summaries and cross-referenced them with readmission data. The pattern's clear. Every time Rourke pushed a new efficiency initiative, readmissions spiked. Collier took the flash drive. Detective Grant needs to see this. She will, Patterson said from the doorway. He'd been listening quietly. But right now, we've got a bigger problem. Everyone turned. Patterson's expression was tight. Rourke's lawyer just filed an emergency motion to suppress the evidence seized from the hospital. He's claiming the search warrant was based on false information provided by a disgruntled former employee. Aaron's blood went cold. Me. You. Claire stood. That's bullshit. Aaron's not the only witness. Doesn't matter, Patterson said. Rourke's lawyer is good. If he can cast doubt on the initial warrant, everything we seized could get thrown out. Jordan's voice was sharp. What do we do? We give Detective Grant ammunition. Collier handed Patterson the flash drive. Get this to her, now. Patterson took it and left at a jog. Aaron felt the walls closing in again. Rourke wasn't just fighting back. He was dismantling the case before it could even begin. She'd seen him operate for 2 years. He didn't make careless moves. He didn't leave openings. He crushed opposition before it could take root. He's going to win, she said quietly. No, Collier said. He's not. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Collier's voice was iron. Because he's operating on old rules. He thinks money and lawyers can bury the truth, but the truth is already out. You made sure of that. Aaron looked at Claire and Jordan. Both of them were pale, but both of them were still standing. Claire met her gaze. We're not backing down. Jordan nodded. Whatever it takes. The door opened. Detective Grant strode in, her phone pressed to her ear, her expression focused. She listened for a moment, then hung up and looked at the room. Federal agents secured the servers at Harborline. They're running a full data recovery now. If anything was deleted in the last 72 hours, they'll find it. What about Rourke's motion? Aaron asked. Grant's smile was sharp. His lawyer can file all the motions he wants. The warrant was solid, and now we have corroborating witnesses. She looked at Claire and Jordan. You two ready to go on the record? Yes, Claire said. Absolutely, Jordan added. Grant pulled out her notebook. Then let's get started. The next 2 hours were a cascade of testimony. Claire and Jordan walked Grant through every detail: dates, patient names, emails, policy changes, conversations with supervisors. Grant's pen moved constantly, filling page after page. Sergeant Patterson brought in a second detective to help process the volume of information. Erin sat in the corner, listening. Every story felt like a knife turning. She'd known the hospital was broken, but hearing the full scope of it, the sheer number of patients harmed, the deliberate suppression of dissent, the way Rourke had weaponized fear to keep everyone silent, was overwhelming. At one point, Grant's phone rang. She stepped out to take the call. When she came back, her expression was unreadable. That was the U.S. Attorney's Office, she said. They're opening a formal investigation into Harborline Medical Center, healthcare fraud, falsification of records, and negligent homicide. Erin's breath caught. Homicide? If we can prove the fraudulent discharges directly caused patient deaths, that's criminal negligence at minimum. Depending on intent, it could be worse. Claire's face went pale. Are we in trouble? For following the policies? No, Grant said firmly. You were following orders from a superior. That's different from creating the policy. You're witnesses, not defendants. Jordan exhaled slowly. Grant looked at Erin. But you're the cornerstone. Without your initial evidence, none of this holds together. Rourke's going to come after you hard. He already has. It's going to get worse. Erin looked at Admiral Collier. He nodded once, steady as stone. I'm ready, Erin said. Grant studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay, here's what happens next. You're going to be deposed, probably multiple times. You'll testify in front of a grand jury. If this goes to trial, you'll be on the stand for days. Rourke's defense team will try to discredit you, paint you as unstable, claim you had an axe to grind. I did have an axe to grind, Erin said. He assaulted me. Which is why we're also pursuing criminal charges for that. Grant's voice was steady. But this is going to be brutal. You need to be prepared. I am. Grant didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. She turned to Claire and Jordan. Same goes for you two. Once your names are public, expect blowback, harassment, threats. Maybe worse. Claire's jaw set. Let them try. Jordan nodded. Grant closed her notebook. All right. I'm going to take your statements downtown. We'll get everything notarized and filed tonight. In the meantime, stay available and stay safe. She left with Claire and Jordan in tow. Erin and Admiral Collier were alone again. The silence stretched. Collier stood and walked to the window. Outside, the terminal was quieter now, the evening flights winding down. The sky beyond the glass was darkening, streaked with orange and purple. You should eat something, Collier said. I'm not hungry. You need to eat anyway. Erin almost smiled. It was the kind of thing her father would have said. No nonsense, practical, caring in a way that didn't waste words. There's a cafe down the concourse, Collier continued. I'll get you something. You don't have to. I know. He looked at her. But I'm going to. He left before she could argue. Erin sat in the empty office, the hum of the building's ventilation system the only sound. Her neck throbbed. Her hands were still shaking, but underneath the exhaustion and fear, something else was growing. Anger. Not the hot, reckless kind. The cold, focused kind. The kind that burned slow and didn't go out. Rourke had hurt people. He'd killed people. And he'd done it while wearing a suit and a smile, hiding behind policies and lawyers and the assumption that no one would ever hold him accountable. Erin had been willing to walk away. To leave Savannah, start over, bury the trauma, and move on. Not anymore. Collier returned with a sandwich, a bottle of water, and a small bag of pretzels. He set them on the table in front of her. Eat, he said. Erin picked up the sandwich. It was turkey and Swiss on wheat. She took a bite. It tasted like cardboard, but she forced herself to chew and swallow. Collier sat down. You're thinking about something. I'm thinking about not running, Erin said. Good. I'm also thinking about how much I want to watch him lose. Collier's expression didn't change. That's natural. Is it? You're angry. You should be. What he did was unforgivable. Collier leaned back. But don't let anger cloud your judgment. This fight isn't about revenge, it's about justice. There's a difference. What's the difference? Revenge is personal. Justice is structural. Revenge makes you feel better for a day. Justice makes sure this never happens to anyone else. Aaron swallowed another bite. You sound like my father. I'll take that as a compliment. She almost smiled. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression tightening. He stood and stepped into the hallway. Aaron could hear his voice, low and clipped, but couldn't make out the words. When he came back, his face was grim. What is it? Aaron asked. That was Detective Grant. Rourke's been released. Aaron's stomach dropped. What? His lawyer posted bail. He walked out 20 minutes ago. How is that possible? He's a flight risk? His lawyer argued he's a respected community leader with deep ties to Savannah. The judge set bail at $500,000. Rourke posted it in cash. Aaron felt the room tilt. Collier's voice was steady. Grant said he's under electronic monitoring. He can't leave the county, but he's out. He's going to come after me. Not directly. He's too smart for that. Then indirectly. Collier didn't argue. Aaron set down the sandwich, her appetite gone. What do I do? You stay visible. You stay surrounded by people who can testify to your safety, and you don't give him any openings. Collier's gaze was steady. I meant what I said earlier. I'm not going anywhere. You'll have protection. I can't ask you to... You didn't ask. I'm offering. Aaron looked at him. The silver eagles on his shoulders, the rows of ribbons on his chest, the weathered face that had seen decades of conflict and come out the other side. Why? She asked quietly. Because someone has to stand up. Collier's voice was quiet, absolute. And because your father would have done the same for my daughter if the roles were reversed. Aaron's throat tightened. Before she could respond, Sergeant Patterson appeared in the doorway. His expression was tense. Admiral, we've got a situation. Collier turned. What kind? Reporters. 3 news vans just pulled up outside the terminal. Someone leaked the story. Aaron's pulse spiked. How much do they know? Enough. Patterson looked grim. They're asking for Aaron Caldwell by name. Collier's jaw tightened. Who leaked it? Don't know yet, but they're setting up cameras at the main entrance. If Ms. Caldwell leaves through there, she's going to be swarmed. Aaron felt the air leave her lungs. Collier looked at Patterson. Is there a back exit? Service corridor on the lower level. We can get her out through the employee lot. Do it. Patterson nodded and left. Collier turned to Aaron. We're leaving. Now. Aaron stood, her legs unsteady. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I don't have anywhere. You do now. Collier's tone left no room for argument. My wife and I have a guest room. You'll stay there until this settles. I can't... Yes, you can. Collier picked up her bag. Let's move. They walked quickly through the terminal, Patterson leading the way. The crowds thinned as they moved away from the main concourse. They descended a stairwell, passed through a maintenance area, and emerged into a dimly lit hallway that smelled like cleaning solution and old carpet. Patterson stopped at a door marked Authorized Personnel Only and pushed it open. Cold night air rushed in. The employee parking lot was nearly empty, just a handful of cars scattered under flickering streetlights. Patterson's cruiser was parked near the curb. Collier guided Aaron toward it, his hand firm on her elbow. They were halfway to the car when headlights flared at the far end of the lot. A black sedan rolled forward, slow and deliberate. Patterson's hand went to his sidearm. That's not one of ours. The sedan stopped 30 feet away. The engine idled. No one got out. Collier stepped in front of Aaron. The driver's side window rolled down. A man's voice called out, smooth and familiar. Aaron, we should talk. Aaron's blood turned to ice. Engine and step out of the vehicle. Engine and step out of the vehicle. Rourke didn't move. The sedan's headlights cast long shadows across the asphalt, turning the parking lot into a stage. Aaron could see his silhouette behind the wheel, perfectly still, perfectly composed. I'm not here to cause trouble, officer, Rourke said, his voice carrying that same warm reasonableness he used in board meetings. I just want 5 minutes with Aaron, privately. Not happening, Collier said. Rourke's attention shifted to him. Even backlit, Aaron could feel the weight of his gaze. Admiral, with all due respect, this is between me and my former employee. She's not your employee anymore, Collier said, and you're violating the conditions of your release by being here. I haven't violated anything. I'm allowed to move freely within the county. This is a public parking lot. Patterson stepped forward. This is airport property. Employee access only. You're trespassing. Rourke's hands appeared on the steering wheel, visible and deliberate. Then I'll leave. But Aaron, you should know, this doesn't have to be a war. We can still resolve this quietly. I have resources. I can make sure you're taken care of. Aaron's voice came out hoarse. Taken care of? Legal fees, relocation costs, a settlement that ensures you never have to work again. Rourke's tone was almost gentle. You've been through a trauma. I understand that. But dragging this through the courts will only hurt you more. Let me help. Help? Aaron's hands clenched. Like you helped Margaret Hines? Like you helped Amy Brennan? The silence stretched. Rourke's voice hardened just slightly. I don't know what lies people have been telling you, but those patients received excellent care. Their outcomes were unfortunate, but medicine isn't an exact science. You of all people should know that. I know you altered their charts. That's a serious accusation, and completely false. I have the files. You have stolen hospital property, which is why you were terminated. Rourke's voice never rose, never cracked. Aaron, I'm offering you a way out. Take it, because if you don't, I will defend myself. And I have better lawyers, better resources, and better credibility than you do. This will end badly for you. Patterson's hand tightened on his weapon. Sir, final warning. Turn off the engine and exit the vehicle. Rourke paused, then the engine shut off. The headlights died. For a moment, the lot was dark, except for the distant glow of streetlights. Then Rourke opened the door and stepped out. He was wearing the same charcoal suit from the terminal, his tie still perfectly knotted. His hands were empty, held loosely at his sides. He looked calm, controlled, utterly unbothered. Patterson moved between him and Aaron. Stay where you are. Rourke stopped. I'm unarmed. I'm compliant. I'm simply trying to have a conversation. You're harassing a witness, Patterson said. A witness to what? A personal grudge? Rourke's gaze shifted to Aaron, his expression almost pitying. Aaron, you were a good nurse once, but you've let this consume you. You've convinced yourself there's some grand conspiracy, when the truth is simpler. You made mistakes, you got caught, and now you're lashing out. Aaron stepped forward. Collier's hand came up, stopping her. Don't, Collier said quietly. But Aaron was done being quiet. I didn't make mistakes, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. You did. You cut corners to boost your profit margins. You discharged patients before they were stable. You altered records to hide the fallout. And when I found out, you tried to destroy me. Rourke's smile was thin. Is that what you're going to tell the court? Yes. Then you'll lose. His voice was soft, almost kind. Because I have documentation showing your erratic behavior. Emails from colleagues expressing concern about your judgment, performance reviews detailing your inability to handle stress, a formal complaint to the nursing board citing potential substance abuse. Aaron's stomach lurched. That's all fabricated. Is it? Or is it the truth you don't want to face? Rourke tilted his head. Here's what a jury will see, Aaron. A disgruntled employee with a history of instability, fired for legitimate reasons, who then stole confidential files and launched a vendetta against her former employer. They'll see someone who needs help, not someone who deserves a platform. Patterson's voice cut through. That's enough. You're leaving. Now. Rourke raised his hand slightly. Of course. But Aaron, think about my offer. It expires in 24 hours. After that, we go to war. And I promise you, I will win. He turned and walked back to the sedan, his movements unhurried. He slid behind the wheel, started the engine, and rolled slowly toward the exit. The taillights disappeared around the corner. Aaron's legs gave out. Collier caught her before she hit the ground, lowering her onto the curb. Patterson pulled out his radio, speaking rapidly into it. Aaron's vision blurred, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. He's right, she whispered. He's going to win. No, Collier said firmly. He's scared. That's why he came here. He didn't sound scared, because he's good at hiding it. But think, Aaron, why would a man with better lawyers and better resources show up in a dark parking lot to offer you money? Because he knows the evidence is real. He knows it's damaging, and he's trying to make it go away before it destroys him. Patterson crouched beside them. I called it in. Detective Grant's on her way, and we're putting out a bolo for that sedan. If he violates his release conditions again, he goes back in holding. Aaron pressed her hands to her face. He's not going to stop. Neither are we, Collier said. 20 minutes later, Detective Grant arrived with 2 uniformed officers and a crime scene tech. They swept the parking lot, photographed tire tracks, and took Aaron's statement. Grant's expression was carved from stone. He violated his bail conditions the second he approached you, Grant said. That's witness intimidation. I'm filing a motion to revoke bail first thing in the morning. Will it work? Aaron asked. Depends on the judge, but combined with everything else, it strengthens our case. Grant looked at Collier. You were right to call me. This escalates things. Collier nodded. What's the threat level? High. Rourke's backed into a corner and he's lashing out. We need to get Ms. Caldwell somewhere secure. Already handled, Collier said. She's staying with my wife and me until this is resolved. Grant studied him for a moment, then nodded. Good. I'll have a patrol car swing by periodically. And Ms. Caldwell, I need you to carry this. She handed Aaron a small card with a phone number. That's my direct line. You see Rourke, you hear from him, you even think you see him. You call immediately. Aaron took the card. Her hands were still shaking. Grant turned to Patterson. Get them out of here. Use an unmarked car, and make sure you're not followed. Patterson nodded. 15 minutes later, Aaron was in the back seat of an unmarked sedan, Collier beside her, Patterson driving. They left through a service gate on the far side of the airport, winding through industrial streets and residential neighborhoods until Aaron lost track of direction entirely. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, typed a brief response, then looked at Aaron. My wife, Sarah. She's getting the guest room ready. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did. The car turned onto a tree-lined street in a quiet suburb. The houses were modest but well kept, with tidy lawns and porch lights glowing warm against the night. Patterson pulled into the driveway of a single-story ranch with white siding and dark shutters. The front door opened before they reached it. A woman stepped out, early 60s, with short silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, her posture relaxed but alert. She looked at Aaron with the kind of assessing gaze that suggested she'd spent years as either a teacher or a nurse. Sarah Collier, she said, extending her hand. You must be Aaron. Aaron shook it. Thank you for... Don't. Sarah's voice was firm but kind. James told me what happened. You're safe here. That's all that matters right now. She guided Aaron inside. The house was warm, lived in. Family photos lined the hallway, Collier in various uniforms over the decades, a younger Sarah, 2 grown children, grandchildren. The living room had a worn couch, bookshelves crammed with hardcovers, and a fireplace with a mantel covered in framed commendations. Sarah led Aaron to a small bedroom at the back of the house. It had a twin bed with a quilt, a dresser, and a window overlooking the backyard. Simple, clean, safe. Bathroom's across the hall, Sarah said. Towels are in the closet. If you need anything, we're right down the hall. Aaron's throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you. You already did. You stood up when everyone else stayed silent. Sarah's expression softened. That takes courage most people don't have. Get some rest. We'll figure out the next steps in the morning. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Aaron sat on the bed, her body heavy with exhaustion. She pulled off the neck brace, wincing as the pressure released. Her neck throbbed, but the relief was immediate. She set the brace on the dresser and lay back, staring at the ceiling. Sleep came in fragments, broken by flashes of Rourke's face, the parking lot, the concrete pillar. She woke twice, pulse hammering, before finally sinking into something deeper. When she woke again, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains. The smell of coffee reached her first. Aaron sat up slowly, every muscle protesting. She found clean clothes folded on the dresser, jeans, a sweater, socks. Sarah's doing. She dressed, splashed water on her face in the bathroom, and followed the coffee smell to the kitchen. Collier and Sarah were at the table, a newspaper spread between them. Sarah looked up and smiled. "Morning. How do you take your coffee?" "Black, thank you." Sarah poured a cup and set it in front of her. "There's toast, eggs, fruit. Help yourself." Erin took a piece of toast but couldn't bring herself to eat more than a few bites. Her stomach was knotted too tight. Collier was reading something on his phone, his expression unreadable. He glanced up. Detective Grant called. "The motion to revoke Rourke's bail is being heard this afternoon." "What are the chances it gets approved?" Erin asked. 50-50. The judge will weigh the severity of the violation against Rourke's ties to the community. In other words, his money might keep him out. Possibly. Collier set down his phone. But even if it does, it puts him under heavier scrutiny. Every move he makes now is being watched. Erin sipped her coffee. It was strong, bitter, grounding. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then frowned. "James, you need to see this." Collier took the phone. His jaw tightened. "What is it?" Erin asked. Collier turned the phone toward her. It was a news article from the Savannah Herald, posted 20 minutes ago. Hospital CEO faces allegations. Former nurse's mental health questioned. The article was brutal. It painted Erin as unstable, vindictive, a nurse who'd been fired for theft and was now making wild accusations to cover her own failures. It quoted anonymous sources from Harborline describing her as erratic and paranoid. It mentioned the complaint filed with the nursing board. It suggested she'd fabricated evidence. And buried near the end, almost as an afterthought, was a single line about the federal investigation, framed as a routine audit prompted by a disgruntled employee's complaints. Erin's hands went numb. "They're controlling the narrative," Sarah said quietly. Collier's expression was carved from granite. "Rourke's PR team. They're getting ahead of the story." Erin set down the phone. "It's working. Everyone's going to believe him." "Not everyone," Collier said. "The people who matter, the investigators, the prosecutors, they have the evidence. This is noise. Noise that's going to destroy what's left of my reputation. Then we fight back." "How?" Collier stood. "By telling your story. The real one." Erin looked up at him. "To who?" "To everyone." An hour later, Erin was sitting in the living room while Collier made calls. Sarah had disappeared into the study, working her own network. Erin's phone buzzed. Detective Grant. She answered. "Hello?" "Miss Caldwell, it's Grant. Have you seen the news?" "Yes." "Ignore it. Rourke's playing the PR game because that's all he has left. We're moving forward with the investigation regardless." "What's the status?" "Federal agents finished the data recovery overnight. They found deleted files, thousands of them. Discharge summaries, incident reports, emails, all deleted within 48 hours of your termination. Rourke's IT team thought they'd wipe them clean. They didn't." Erin's pulse quickened. "What do the files show?" "Exactly what you said. Altered timestamps, falsified discharge codes, directives from Rourke ordering early discharges despite medical objections. We also found financial records linking his performance bonuses to reduce patient stay times. That's fraud. That's a pattern of fraud, and it's prosecutable." Grant's voice hardened. "We're also pulling security footage from the parking garage the night he assaulted you. If we can get visual confirmation, that's assault with evidence." "The cameras were broken. I checked." "Rourke told you they were broken. Doesn't mean they were." Grant paused. "We're building a case, Ms. Caldwell. A strong one. But I need you to hold steady. Can you do that?" Erin looked at Collier, who was still on the phone, his voice low and firm. She looked at Sarah, who'd emerged from the study with a notepad covered in names and numbers. "Yes," Erin said. "I can." "Good. I'll call you when the bail hearing wraps up." Grant hung up. Collier finished his call and turned to Erin. "I just spoke with a reporter I trust at the Savannah Post. She's willing to hear your side. But only if you're ready." Erin's stomach twisted. "Ready for what?" "An on-the-record interview. Your story, your evidence, your truth." "Rourke will shred me. He'll try, but you'll have the facts, and facts are harder to ignore than spin." Collier sat down across from her. This is your choice, Aaron. No one's forcing you, but if you want to fight back, this is how you do it. Aaron thought about the article, the lies, the anonymous sources calling her unstable, the patients whose deaths had been buried under paperwork and PR. She thought about her father, who'd taught her the signal, who told her once, after she'd failed a test in high school, that failure wasn't falling down. It was staying down. She looked at Collier. Set it up. The reporter's name was Vanessa Cho. She arrived at the Collier house 2 hours later with a digital recorder, a notepad, and the kind of sharp, no-nonsense demeanor that suggested she didn't waste time on stories that didn't matter. She sat across from Aaron in the living room, recorder on the coffee table between them. "Before we start," Vanessa said, "I need to be clear. If I'm publishing this, I need corroboration. I need documents, witnesses, something beyond your word." "I have documents," Aaron said. "And there are other witnesses, nurses who've come forward. Names? Lila Pruitt, Claire Whitman, Jordan Hayes." Vanessa wrote them down. "And you're willing to go on the record? Name, photo, full details?" Aaron hesitated. Collier spoke quietly from the doorway. "Once your name's out there, it's out there. You can't take it back." Aaron looked at him, then at Vanessa. "I know." She took a breath. "My name is Erin Caldwell. I'm a registered nurse, and I was assaulted and blacklisted for trying to stop a man from killing patients." For the next 2 hours, Aaron told Vanessa everything. The altered logs, the early discharges, the patients who died, the parking garage, Rourke's threats, the files she'd kept. The moment she gave the signal at the airport, Vanessa asked sharp, precise questions. She took notes. She cross-referenced dates. She asked for documentation, and Aaron provided copies of everything on the USB drive. When it was done, Vanessa sat back. "This is going to make waves." "Good," Aaron said. "It's also going to make you a target." "I already am." Vanessa looked at Collier. "You're willing to be quoted? As a witness to the airport incident?" "Absolutely," Collier said. Vanessa nodded. "I'll have this fact-checked and published by tomorrow morning. Once it's out, there's no going back." "I understand." Vanessa packed up her recorder and notepad. "For what it's worth, Miss Caldwell, you're braver than most people I've interviewed." "I'm not brave," Aaron said. "I'm just out of options." "Sometimes that's the same thing." Vanessa left. Aaron sat in the quiet living room, Sarah beside her, Collier standing by the window. The weight of what she'd just done settled over her like a blanket, heavy, suffocating, but also strangely comforting. She'd told the truth. All of it. And now the world would hear it. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked up sharply. "Grant just texted. The bail hearing's over." Aaron's pulse spiked. "And?" Collier read the message, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at Aaron, and something like satisfaction flickered in his eyes. "Bail revoked. Rourke's back in custody." Aaron felt the air leave her lungs. Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand, but Collier wasn't smiling. He was still reading the message, his frown deepening. "What is it?" Aaron asked. Collier looked up. "Grant says Rourke's legal team is already filing an emergency appeal, and they've subpoenaed your medical records, psychiatric evaluations, anything they can use to discredit you." Aaron's stomach dropped. "Can they do that?" "They can try. Whether a judge allows it is another question." Sarah's grip tightened. "They're going scorched earth." "They are," Collier said, "which means we need to be ready." Aaron's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" A woman's voice, shaking and young. "Miss Caldwell, my name is Rachel Winters. I'm a nurse at Harborline. I heard what you did, and I need to tell you something." Aaron's pulse quickened. "What is it?" "There's a patient here right now. Same thing that happened to the others. Discharge order came down this morning. She's not stable. Blood pressure's all over the place. But administration's pushing us to send her home." Aaron stood. "Who gave the order?" "The interim CEO, Rourke's replacement." Rachel's voice cracked. "But it's the same policies, the same pressure. They're still doing it." Aaron looked at Collier, her heart hammering. "What's the patient's name?" "Diane Foster, 68 years old, post-surgical. If we discharge her now, she's going to crash." "Don't discharge her," Aaron said. Stall. Call the attending. File an incident report. They'll fire me. They'll fire you anyway if she dies. Aaron's voice was firm. Rachel, you have to fight this, right now. There was a long pause. Then Rachel's voice came back, steadier. Okay, I'll try. Don't try. Do it. And call Detective Marissa Grant at Savannah PD. Tell her everything. Okay. Rachel hung up. Aaron looked at Collier. They're still doing it, even with Rourke in custody. Collier's jaw tightened. Then this is bigger than one man. Sarah stood. What do we do? Aaron's hands clenched. We make sure Diane Foster doesn't become another statistic. She grabbed her phone and dialed Grant. The detective answered on the second ring. Grant. It's Aaron. I just got a call from a nurse at Harborline. They're trying to discharge a patient against medical advice right now. Same pattern as before. Grant's voice sharpened. Name. Diane Foster, 68, post-surgical. I'm on it. Grant's line went muffled as she barked orders to someone else. Then she came back. I'm sending officers to Harborline now. If they discharge her before we get there, we'll have grounds for an emergency injunction. Will that hold? It'll buy time, and time is what we need. Grant paused. Ms. Caldwell, this is good. You just potentially saved a life. Aaron's throat tightened. Just make sure she's safe. I will. Grant hung up. Aaron stood in the living room, her pulse hammering, her mind racing. The fight wasn't over. It was escalating, and now it wasn't just about Rourke. It was about an entire system that had learned to prioritize profit over people. Collier's phone buzzed again. He looked at it, and his expression went cold. What now? Sarah asked. Collier turned the phone toward them. It was a text from an unknown number. No words. Just a photo. It was Aaron's apartment building, taken from across the street, time-stamped 30 minutes ago, and written across the bottom in block letters, "We know where you live." Aaron stared at the photo, her apartment building sharp and unmistakable in the afternoon light. The angle suggested someone had been standing across the street, waiting, watching. The timestamp was recent enough that whoever took it might still be there. Collier's voice cut through her paralysis. Sarah, get the blinds. Sarah moved immediately, pulling curtains closed throughout the house with practiced efficiency. Collier was already dialing, phone pressed to his ear. Detective Grant, we have a credible threat. Someone just sent Aaron a photo of her apartment building with a message. He paused, listening. 30 minutes ago, unknown number. Another pause. Understood. We're staying put. He hung up and turned to Aaron. Grant's sending a unit to your building and tracing the number. She wants us to forward the message to her immediately. Aaron's hands were shaking as she forwarded the text. The image disappeared from her screen but stayed burned in her mind. Someone had been watching her home. Someone knew where she lived. And now that she wasn't there, they wanted her to know they'd been looking. Sarah returned to the living room. Windows are covered. Doors are locked. I checked the backyard. Nothing unusual. Collier nodded. We sit tight until Grant gives us the all clear. They're trying to scare me, Aaron said quietly. They're succeeding, Sarah replied. That's the point. No. Aaron looked up, her jaw tight. The point is to make me back down, and I'm not going to. Collier's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Approval, maybe, or recognition. Then we make sure they know it. 20 minutes later, Grant called back. Her voice was clipped, professional. The number's a burner. Activated yesterday. Used once, already deactivated. We can't trace it. Aaron's stomach sank. What about my building? Officers swept the area. No one suspicious. But your landlord confirmed someone claiming to be from a utility company asked about your apartment this morning. Wanted to know if you still lived there. What did he tell them? That you'd moved out. He didn't give details. Grant paused. Ms. Caldwell, I'm recommending you don't return to that apartment at all, even to get your things. Everything I own is there. Everything you own can be replaced. You can't. Grant's tone softened slightly. We'll arrange to have your belongings packed and moved to a secure location, but you need to stay off the grid for now. Aaron looked around the Collier living room, the family photos, the worn furniture, the life that wasn't hers. She was a guest in someone else's home, hiding from people who wanted to silence her. How long? She asked. Until we have Rourke's network dismantled. Could be days. Could be weeks. Erin closed her eyes. Okay. One more thing, Grant said. The nurse who called you, Rachel Winters, she filed an incident report about Diane Foster. The interim CEO tried to override it. We intervened. Mrs. Foster's staying in the hospital under observation. Is she stable? For now, but you were right. If they discharged her, she wouldn't have made it through the night. Grant's voice hardened. We're also opening an investigation into the interim CEO. This goes deeper than Rourke. How deep? We're finding out. Grant hung up. Erin sat heavily on the couch. Sarah appeared with a fresh cup of coffee and set it on the table without a word. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of a wall clock. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked at Erin. Vanessa Cho's article just went live. Erin's pulse spiked. Already? She fast-tracked it. Collier pulled up the article on his phone and handed it to her. The headline filled the screen. Whistleblower nurse exposes systematic fraud at Harborline Medical Center. They were killing people for profit. Below it was a photo of Erin, one Vanessa must have taken during the interview. Erin looked exhausted, defiant, and utterly real. The article was thorough. It detailed the altered discharge records, the patients who'd died, the assault in the parking garage, the blacklisting campaign. It quoted Lila, Claire, and Jordan by name. It included scanned documents from the USB drive. And it ended with a statement from Admiral Collier describing the signal at the airport and his decision to intervene. Erin read it twice, her hands trembling. It's out there, she whispered. All of it, Collier confirmed. Sarah's phone buzzed, then Collier's, then Erin's. The notifications came in waves, texts, emails, calls from numbers Erin didn't recognize. Sarah glanced at her screen. The article's being shared thousands of times already. Erin's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something made her answer. Ms. Caldwell? A man's voice, formal and careful. My name is David Brennan. My wife was Amy Brennan. Erin's breath caught. Jordan had mentioned Amy, the woman who'd bled out after being discharged too early. Mr. Brennan, I just read the article, he said, his voice thick. I've been trying to get answers for months. The hospital told me it was a complication, that it wasn't their fault, but I knew something was wrong. I knew they were lying. Erin's throat tightened. I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. You're the first person who's told me the truth. His voice cracked. Thank you for not letting them bury her. Erin couldn't speak. I'm going to the police, David continued. I'm going to tell them everything, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what they did to my wife. You don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice steadied. Because if I don't, someone else's wife dies, someone else's mother, and I can't live with that. He hung up. Erin sat staring at the phone, tears blurring her vision. Sarah moved beside her, a hand on her shoulder. You gave him a voice, Sarah said quietly. That matters. Erin nodded, unable to speak. Collier's phone rang. He answered, listened, then his expression hardened. When? A pause. Understood. We'll be ready. He hung up and looked at Erin. That was Grant. The U.S. Attorney's Office is convening a grand jury tomorrow morning. They're moving fast. Why? Because the article lit a fire under them. The public's paying attention now. They can't afford to drag this out. Collier's voice was steady. You'll be subpoenaed to testify. So will Lila, Claire, and Jordan. Erin's stomach twisted. What do I need to do? Tell the truth, exactly the way you told Vanessa. Collier sat down across from her. But understand, Rourke's lawyers will try to discredit you. They'll bring up your termination, the nursing board complaint, anything they can use to make you look unstable. I know. And you'll have to relive the assault, in detail, in front of strangers. Erin met his gaze. I can handle it. Collier studied her for a moment, then nodded. I believe you. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of phone calls and preparation. Grant sent over a briefing document outlining what to expect during grand jury testimony. Vanessa called to say the article had been picked up by national outlets. Sarah made dinner that no one ate. At some point, Erin found herself standing in the guest room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. The bruises on her neck had faded to yellow-green, barely visible now. The woman looking back at her was thin, exhausted, and hollow-eyed, but she was still standing. A knock at the door. Sarah stepped in, carrying a folder. "I thought you might want to see this." She handed Erin the folder. Inside were printouts of social media posts, news comments, messages of support from people Erin had never met. Nurses from across the country sharing their own stories of being pressured to cut corners, to discharge patients too early, to stay silent when something felt wrong. One message stood out. "I was a patient at Harborline last year. They sent me home when I could barely walk. I ended up back in the ER 2 days later. Thank you for speaking up. You probably saved my life." Erin's vision blurred. "You're not alone in this," Sarah said gently. "You never were." Erin nodded, unable to find words. That night, sleep came in fragments again. But this time, when Erin woke in the dark, it wasn't from fear, it was from determination. The next morning, Collier drove her to the federal courthouse downtown. The building was granite and glass, imposing and sterile. Photographers and reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as Erin and Collier walked past. Someone shouted her name. She didn't look up. Inside, Detective Grant was waiting with a federal prosecutor, a woman in her 40s named Catherine Marsh, with steel-gray eyes and the kind of no-nonsense presence that filled a room. "Ms. Caldwell," Marsh said, shaking her hand, "I've reviewed your evidence. It's strong. But I need you to be prepared for what's about to happen in there. Grand jury proceedings are one-sided. Rourke's lawyers won't be present, but that doesn't mean this will be easy." "I understand." Marsh studied her. "You've been through a lot. If at any point you need a break, you tell me. Understood?" Erin nodded. They led her to a conference room to wait. Lila, Claire, and Jordan were already there, all looking pale and tense. Lila stood when Erin entered, her eyes red. "I'm scared," Lila said quietly. "Me too," Erin replied. Claire crossed her arms. "They're going to try to make us look incompetent, like we didn't know what we were doing." "Then we show them we did," Jordan said. "We show them we knew exactly what was happening." An assistant opened the door. "Ms. Caldwell, they're ready for you." Erin stood. Collier squeezed her shoulder once, brief and firm. Then she followed the assistant down a hallway and into a large room filled with jurors, ordinary people sitting in tiered rows, watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Catherine Marsh stood at a podium. "Please state your name for the record." Erin's voice came out steady. "Erin Caldwell." "Ms. Caldwell, you were employed as a registered nurse at Harborline Medical Center. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And you were terminated 3 weeks ago. Can you tell the jury why?" Erin took a breath. "I was terminated because I discovered evidence of healthcare fraud and patient endangerment, and when I confronted the CEO about it, he assaulted me and then used his position to destroy my reputation." Marsh's expression didn't change. "Let's start from the beginning." For the next 2 hours, Erin walked the grand jury through everything: the altered logs, the emails, the patients, the parking garage, the airport, the threats. Marsh asked precise questions, guiding her through the timeline, establishing facts. At one point, Marsh displayed one of the emails on a screen, Rourke's directive to reduce patient stay times tied to performance bonuses. "Can you explain what this means in practical terms?" Marsh asked. "It means the CEO's salary increased every time patients were discharged faster. It created a financial incentive to send people home before they were ready." "And did that happen?" "Yes, repeatedly." Marsh pulled up another document, Margaret Hines' discharge summary, with the altered timestamp highlighted. "This patient died 6 hours after discharge. Is that correct?" Erin's voice wavered. "Yes." "And you believe her death was preventable?" "I know it was. Her vitals were unstable. She should have stayed another day." The room was silent. Marsh continued methodically, building the case piece by piece. When she finally said, "No further questions," Erin felt like she'd run a marathon. She was escorted out. Collier was waiting in the hallway. "How did it go?" he asked. I told them everything. Good. Lila went in next, then Claire, then Jordan. Each of them emerged looking drained but resolute. By early afternoon, the grand jury had heard from all 4 nurses, plus 2 federal agents who'd analyzed the seized data. Catherine Marsh stepped out of the courtroom, her expression unreadable. She walked over to where Aaron and the others were waiting. The grand jury will deliberate, Marsh said. But based on the evidence and testimony, I'm confident they'll return indictments. How many? Grant asked. Multiple. Fraud, falsification of records, witness intimidation, assault, possibly manslaughter depending on how the medical examiner's reports align with the discharge data. Aaron's knees weakened. Collier steadied her. What happens now? Claire asked. We wait, Marsh said. Could be hours, could be days. In the meantime, stay available and stay safe. She walked away. Aaron sank into a chair in the hallway, her body heavy. Jordan sat beside her. Claire leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Lila stared at the floor. We did it, Lila whispered. Not yet, Claire said, but we're close. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then frowned. Grant wants us back at the station. She says there's something we need to see. They arrived at the Savannah Police Department 20 minutes later. Grant met them in a conference room, her laptop open on the table. Her expression was grim. What is it? Aaron asked. Grant turned the laptop toward them. We got a call an hour ago from Harborline's IT director. He just walked in and handed us this. On the screen was a video file. Grant pressed play. The footage was grainy, black and white, time-stamped 3 weeks ago. It showed the executive parking garage at Harborline Medical Center, Level 3. A figure entered the frame, Aaron, walking toward her car. Then another figure appeared, Rourke, moving quickly, his hand reaching out. The next seconds were brutal. Rourke's hand on Aaron's shoulder, the shove. Aaron's body hitting the concrete pillar, her knees buckling. Rourke leaning in close, his mouth moving, words Aaron could still hear in her nightmares. Then he walked away. The video ended. The room was silent. Aaron's hands were shaking. I thought the cameras were broken. Rourke told you they were broken, Grant said, but the IT director kept the footage. He buried it in a backup server and didn't tell anyone. Until today. Why now? Jordan asked. Because he saw the article, and he realized if he didn't come forward, he'd be complicit. Grant's voice was hard. This is criminal assault with video evidence. Rourke's lawyers can't talk their way out of this. Aaron stared at the frozen image on the screen, Rourke's hand on her shoulder, her body mid-fall. Proof. Undeniable and clear. We're adding this to the evidence file, Grant said, and I'm personally walking it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Collier spoke quietly. How long until the grand jury decision? Could be any time now. Grant's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up sharply. They're back. Grand juries reached a decision. The courthouse was chaos when they returned. News crews had multiplied, cameras and microphones crowding the steps. Aaron, Collier, and the other nurses pushed through to the entrance, Grant clearing a path. Inside, Catherine Marsh was waiting. Her expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. The grand jury has returned indictments, she said. Multiple counts. Healthcare fraud, falsification of medical records, witness intimidation, assault, and 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Aaron's breath stopped. Involuntary manslaughter? Claire whispered. Marsh nodded. The medical examiner reviewed the cases of Margaret Hines, Amy Brennan, and 1 other patient, Thomas Ridley. In all 3 cases, the evidence supports that premature discharge directly contributed to their deaths. Combined with the fraudulent coding and Rourke's financial incentives, that meets the threshold for criminal negligence. Lila covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. What about the interim CEO? Jordan asked. Also indicted. He continued the policies knowing they were under investigation. That's obstruction and conspiracy. Grant stepped forward. When do the arrests happen? Warrants are being executed now, Marsh said. As if on cue, Grant's phone rang. She answered, listened, then looked at Aaron. Rourke's being transferred from county holding to federal custody. He'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. Aaron felt something crack open inside her chest. Not relief, not yet, but the first fragile edge of it. Marsh continued, "This is going to trial. It'll be long, it'll be public, and it'll be brutal. But we have the evidence, and we have all of you." She looked at Aaron, then at Lila, Claire, and Jordan. "You did this. You held the line when everyone else looked away. That matters." Aaron's throat tightened. Marsh's assistant appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Marsh, the press is asking for a statement." Marsh nodded. "I'll handle it." She looked at Aaron. "Do you want to be there?" Aaron hesitated. Then she looked at Collier, who nodded once. "Yes," Aaron said. They walked to the courthouse steps. The cameras surged forward, microphones bristling. Marsh stepped to the podium, her voice clear and firm. "This afternoon, a federal grand jury returned multiple indictments against Gavin Rourke, former CEO of Harborline Medical Center, and others, on charges including healthcare fraud, falsification of records, witness intimidation, assault, and involuntary manslaughter. These charges stem from a systematic pattern of prioritizing profit over patient safety, resulting in preventable deaths. This investigation is ongoing, and we expect additional charges as evidence continues to emerge." A reporter shouted, "What role did the whistleblower play?" Marsh glanced at Aaron. "Ms. Erin Caldwell, a registered nurse, provided critical evidence and testimony at great personal risk. Her courage and the courage of other healthcare workers who came forward made this prosecution possible." Another reporter, "Is Rourke in custody?" "He's being transferred to federal custody as we speak." The questions kept coming, but Aaron stopped hearing them. She stood beside Collier, Claire, Lila, and Jordan, the cameras flashing, the weight of the moment settling over her. She'd done it. They'd done it. That evening, back at the Collier house, Aaron sat in the guest room staring at her phone. Messages flooded in: support, gratitude, anger at the hospital, solidarity from nurses across the country. One message stood out, from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Caldwell, this is Rachel Winters. Diane Foster is stable. The doctors say she'll make a full recovery. You saved her life. Thank you." Aaron read it 3 times, tears blurring the screen. A knock at the door. Sarah stepped in. "Dinner's ready, if you're hungry." Aaron wiped her eyes. "I'll be right there." Sarah paused in the doorway. "You should be proud of yourself." "I don't feel proud. I feel exhausted." "That's normal. Pride comes later." Sarah smiled gently. "But trust me, it'll come." Aaron joined them in the kitchen. Collier had made pasta, simple and warm. They ate in companionable silence, the kind that came from shared ordeal and mutual respect. Collier's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then set it down. "Grant says Rourke's arraignment is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. She wants us there." "Will he get bail again?" Aaron asked. "Not with manslaughter charges. He's staying in custody until trial." Aaron nodded slowly. Sarah refilled her water glass. "What happens after the trial?" "I don't know," Aaron admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead." "You'll rebuild," Collier said. "One step at a time." Aaron looked at him. "I don't even know where to start." "You start by surviving today, then tomorrow, then the day after that." Collier's voice was steady. "Eventually, survival becomes living again." That night, Aaron lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in weeks, the fear was quieter. Not gone, never gone, but muted. She thought about her father, about the signal, about the moment at the airport when she'd raised her hand and bet everything on a stranger's honor. She'd won that bet. And tomorrow she'd face Rourke one more time, not as his victim, but as the person who'd brought him down. Her phone buzzed, a text from Detective Grant. "Arraignment at 9 a.m. Be ready." And "Aaron, you did good." Aaron set the phone aside and closed her eyes. She was ready. The courthouse was packed the next morning. Aaron sat in the gallery between Collier and Grant, surrounded by other nurses, reporters, and families of patients who'd been harmed. The air felt electric, charged with the weight of what was about to happen. The bailiff called the room to order. "All rise." The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. "Be seated." The side door opened. Gavin Rourke walked in, flanked by federal marshals. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. His hair was uncombed, his face unshaven, his eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the polished CEO who'd smiled at board meetings and threatened Aaron in parking lots. He looked beaten. The judge reviewed the charges: healthcare fraud, falsification of records, witness intimidation, assault, 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Rourke's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client intends to plead not guilty to all charges. We request bail pending trial. The prosecutor, Catherine Marsh, rose immediately. Your Honor, the defendant is facing multiple felony charges, including manslaughter. He has significant financial resources and has already demonstrated a willingness to intimidate witnesses. He is a clear flight risk and a danger to the community. The government strongly opposes bail. The judge looked at Rourke. Mr. Rourke, do you have anything to say? Rourke stood slowly. For a moment he said nothing. Then his gaze swept the courtroom, landing briefly on Aaron. She didn't look away. I dedicated my career to health care, Rourke said quietly. I've saved lives. I've built programs. I've served this community for 20 years. These charges are— Save it for trial, Mr. Rourke, the judge said flatly. Bail is denied. You'll remain in federal custody pending trial. Next hearing is set for 3 weeks from today. The gavel fell. Rourke's shoulders sagged. The marshals led him toward the side door. As he passed Aaron's row, he looked at her one last time. She met his gaze, her expression calm, steady, unafraid. Then he was gone. The courtroom erupted. Whispers, movement, reporters rushing for the doors. Aaron sat motionless, her hands folded in her lap. Collier leaned close. How do you feel? Aaron thought about it. Like I can breathe again. Outside, cameras swarmed. Marsh gave a brief statement. Aaron stood beside her, silent but present, her face calm. When it was over, Grant pulled her aside. You know this isn't finished, right? Trial could take months. I know. And Rourke's team will fight every step of the way. Let them. Grant studied her. You've changed. Aaron nodded slowly. I had to. That afternoon, Aaron sat in the Collier living room with her phone, scrolling through messages. One caught her eye, from the Georgia State Board of Nursing. Ms. Caldwell, in light of recent developments, the complaint filed against your license has been dismissed with prejudice. Your license is fully reinstated. We apologize for any distress this matter caused. Aaron stared at the message, her vision blurring. Sarah appeared with tea. Good news? My license. They reinstated it. Sarah smiled. Of course they did. Aaron's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Mrs. Caldwell? A man's voice, calm and professional. My name is Dr. Marcus Lyle. I'm the new interim chief medical officer at Tideway Regional Hospital, across town. I read about what you did, and I'd like to offer you a position. Aaron's breath caught. A position? Patient safety advocate. It's a new role we're creating. Your job would be to identify systemic risks, review policies, and make sure what happened at Harborline never happens here. You'd report directly to me, with full authority to escalate concerns. Aaron couldn't speak. I know you've been through hell, Dr. Lyle continued, and I know trust is hard right now, but we need people like you, people who won't stay silent. Think about it. And if you're interested, call me. He left a number and hung up. Aaron sat staring at the phone. Collier appeared in the doorway. Everything all right? I just got offered a job. Already? Patient safety advocate at Tideway Regional. Collier's expression softened. Are you going to take it? Aaron looked at him. I don't know. Part of me wants to walk away from healthcare entirely. And the other part? The other part knows that if I walk away, Rourke wins. Not legally, he's going to prison, but morally. He gets to say I was too broken to keep fighting. Collier sat down across from her. Then don't let him. Aaron nodded slowly. That night she called Dr. Lyle back and accepted the position. 2 days later, a courier arrived at the Collier house with a package. Aaron opened it carefully. Inside was a framed certificate, her nursing license, officially reinstated, and a handwritten note. Ms. Caldwell, on behalf of Tideway Regional, welcome to the team. Your start date is flexible. Take the time you need. We'll be ready when you are. Dr. Marcus Lyle. Erin held the certificate, her hands steady for the first time in weeks. Sarah found her in the guest room, packing the few belongings she had. You're leaving? I need to find my own place, Erin said. You and Admiral Collier have done more than enough. You're not a burden, Erin. I know, but I need to stand on my own again. Sarah nodded, understanding. Where will you go? There's a small apartment near Tideway Regional, month-to-month lease. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Sarah helped her pack. That evening, Collier drove her to the new apartment, a modest one-bedroom in a quiet complex. It had plain walls, old carpet, and a window that overlooked a parking lot. It felt like freedom. Collier carried her bag inside. You need anything, you call, day or night. I will. He turned to leave, then paused. Your father would be proud of you. Erin's throat tightened. Thank you, Admiral. James, just James. He left. Erin stood in the empty apartment, her reflection visible in the darkened window. She looked thin, tired, still healing, but she looked alive. Her phone buzzed. A text from Detective Grant. Rourke's legal team just filed a motion to suppress the parking garage video. They're claiming it was obtained illegally. Erin stared at the message, her jaw tightening. She typed back, Will it work? Grant's response came immediately. Not a chance. The IT director volunteered it, but they're getting desperate. Be ready for more. Erin set the phone down. She walked to the window and looked out at the night. Somewhere across the city, Rourke was sitting in a cell, his empire crumbling, his future measured in years of confinement. And here she was, alone, rebuilding, but no longer afraid. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a news alert. Second executive arrested in Harborline scandal. Federal investigation expands. Erin opened the article. The former CFO had been indicted for conspiracy and fraud. The board of directors was under scrutiny. The hospital's accreditation was being reviewed. The whole structure was collapsing. And at the center of it all was the truth Erin had refused to bury. She sat on the floor of her empty apartment, her back against the wall, and let herself feel it. The weight, the victory, the cost. Then her phone rang. Unknown number again. She answered. Hello? A woman's voice, shaking but determined. Miss Caldwell? My name is Dr. Samantha Park. I'm a physician at Riverside Medical in Charleston. I've been seeing the same patterns you described at Harborline, and I don't know what to do. Erin closed her eyes. Then she opened them, her voice steady. Tell me everything. Dr. Samantha Park's voice trembled through the phone, each word carrying the weight of someone who'd been holding a terrible secret too long. Erin listened without interrupting as the physician described discharge quotas at Riverside Medical in Charleston, incident reports that vanished from the system, and a chief of staff who'd told her to stop asking questions or find another hospital. When Samantha finally stopped talking, the silence stretched. How many patients? Erin asked quietly. I don't know. Maybe a dozen in the last 6 months. Maybe more. Samantha's breath hitched. I saw what happened to you at Harborline. I saw what they did to you, and I'm terrified the same thing will happen to me. It might, Erin said. Probably will. Then why are you telling me to come forward? I'm not. Erin stood, walking to the window of her empty apartment. I'm telling you that staying silent has a cost too, and only you can decide which cost you're willing to pay. Samantha was quiet for a long moment. If I do this, if I report it, will you help me? Erin thought about the grand jury testimony, the threats, the parking garage, the weeks of fear. She thought about Margaret Hines and Amy Brennan and all the others whose names she'd never know. Yes, she said, I'll help you. How? First, document everything, every policy violation, every questionable discharge, every warning you've been given. Print it, save it somewhere safe, multiple copies. Then contact the U.S. Attorney's Office in South Carolina. Ask for someone in healthcare fraud. Tell them you have evidence of systematic patient endangerment. What if they don't believe me? They will, because Harborline wasn't an isolated case. The feds are looking for patterns now. Erin's voice steadied. You won't be alone in this, Samantha. I promise. After they hung up, Erin stood at the window for a long time, watching headlights move through the darkness. Her phone buzzed with the text from Detective Grant. Rourke's lawyer withdrew the motion to suppress the video. They know it won't hold. Trial prep starts next week. You ready? Erin typed back, yes. The next morning, she reported to Tideway Regional Hospital for her first day as patient safety advocate. The building was smaller than Harborline, older but better maintained, with staff who looked tired but not beaten. Dr. Marcus Lyle met her in the lobby, a tall man in his 50s with kind eyes and the calm demeanor of someone who'd spent decades in emergency medicine. Miss Caldwell, welcome. He shook her hand firmly. I want to show you something. He led her through the hospital to a conference room where 15 staff members were waiting, nurses, physicians, administrators. They stood when she entered. Dr. Lyle gestured to the group. These are the people who pushed for your position to be created. They read about what happened at Harborline, and they wanted to make sure it could never happen here. A nurse in her 30s stepped forward. I'm Kelly Torres. I've been here 8 years, and I've seen things that worried me, but I didn't know how to report them without risking my job. Now we have you. Another nurse, older, with graying hair. We need someone who won't back down, someone who's already proven they can't be silenced. Erin's throat tightened. I don't know if I'm that person. You are, Dr. Lyle said quietly. You already proved it. He handed her a folder. This is every incident report filed in the last 2 years that was marked no action required. I want you to review them. See if there are patterns we missed. And if you find something wrong, you have full authority to escalate it. To me, to the board, to regulators. No one here will stop you. Erin took the folder, her hands steady. What if I find something that makes the hospital look bad? Then we fix it. Dr. Lyle's voice was firm. Because looking bad is temporary. Killing patients is permanent. Erin opened the folder that night in her apartment, spreading the reports across her small kitchen table. Most were routine, medication errors caught before administration, falls with minor injuries, equipment malfunctions. But 3 stood out. All involved the same surgical unit. All described post-operative patients developing infections. All had been marked resolved without clear documentation of what resolution actually meant. She made notes, cross-referenced dates, and flagged the reports for follow-up. Then she called Dr. Lyle. I found something. Tell me. She explained the pattern. Dr. Lyle listened, then sighed heavily. I was afraid of that. The surgical unit's been under review for sterilization protocol violations. We thought we'd corrected it, but if patients are still getting infected, you need an independent audit, Erin said, and you need to notify the patients. That'll trigger a lawsuit. Probably, but it's the right thing to do. There was a pause, then Dr. Lyle said, Set it up. I'll back you. The audit revealed that sterilization protocols had been bypassed during overnight shifts to save time. 3 patients had developed serious infections as a direct result. Tideway Regional disclosed the violations, contacted the affected patients, and implemented mandatory oversight for all surgical sterilizations. 2 patients filed lawsuits. The hospital settled both within a month. But no one died. And Erin's position was reinforced, not eliminated. Word spread. Other hospitals started calling, asking about the patient safety advocate model. Erin found herself on conference calls with administrators from across the Southeast, explaining how the role worked, what authority it required, why it mattered. She became something she'd never intended, a voice for systemic change. 6 weeks after the arraignment, the trial began. The federal courthouse was packed every day. Erin sat in the gallery with Lila, Claire, Jordan, and Admiral Collier, watching as Catherine Marsh methodically dismantled Rourke's defense. Witnesses testified to the discharge quotas, the altered records, the financial incentives. Medical experts explained how the policies had directly contributed to patient deaths. Rourke's lawyer tried to paint the nurses as disgruntled employees with axes to grind. But when Marsh played the parking garage video, Rourke's hand on Erin's shoulder, the violent shove, Erin collapsing against the pillar, the courtroom went silent. The defense had no response. On the 8th day of trial, Erin took the stand. Marsh's questions were precise, guiding her through the timeline without drama. Erin spoke clearly, her voice steady, recounting the altered logs, the confrontation, the assault, the blacklisting. Then Rourke's lawyer stood for cross-examination. Ms. Caldwell, you were terminated for stealing hospital files, correct? I was terminated for exposing fraud. That's not what your termination paperwork says. The paperwork was falsified. The lawyer smiled thinly. Or perhaps you're the one falsifying things. Isn't it true you were struggling with personal issues at the time of your termination? That colleagues had expressed concerns about your stability? Aaron met his gaze. Yes. Colleagues who were pressured by administration to make those statements. 2 of them have since recanted. Convenient. It's documented. The lawyer's smile faded. He tried a different angle. You claim my client assaulted you, but you didn't report it to police immediately, did you? No. Why not? Because I was terrified. Because he'd already destroyed my career and my reputation. Because I thought no one would believe me. And yet, here you are, with a new job, a platform, national attention. The lawyer's tone sharpened. Isn't it possible you fabricated this entire narrative for personal gain? Aaron leaned forward slightly. 3 people are dead. Margaret Hines, Amy Brennan, Thomas Ridley. I didn't fabricate them. The lawyer had no response. Marsh stood. Redirect, Your Honor? The judge nodded. Marsh approached the stand. Ms. Caldwell, what did you gain from coming forward? Aaron thought about the weeks of fear, the threats, the empty apartment, the nights she couldn't sleep. Nothing. I lost my job, my home, my savings. I was blacklisted and threatened. I gained nothing except the knowledge that I tried to stop people from being killed. Would you do it again? Aaron didn't hesitate. Yes. Marsh nodded. No further questions. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Aaron was at Tideway Regional reviewing surgical protocols when her phone rang. Detective Grant. Verdict's in. Guilty on all counts. Aaron sank into her chair. All of them? Fraud, falsification, intimidation, assault, 3 counts of manslaughter. The jury didn't even hesitate. Grant's voice carried grim satisfaction. Sentencing's in 2 weeks, but the prosecutor's asking for 20 years minimum. Aaron closed her eyes. It's over. This part is. The civil suits are just starting. I know. And Aaron, you did this. You and the others. Don't forget that. After Grant hung up, Aaron sat in her small office at Tideway, staring at the incident reports on her desk. Outside the window, she could see the hospital parking lot, nurses coming and going between shifts, ordinary people doing extraordinary work. Her phone buzzed, a text from Claire. We won. Then Lila. Guilty. All counts. Oh my God. Then Jordan. Justice. Admiral Collier called. I heard. How are you holding up? I don't know yet, Aaron admitted. It doesn't feel real. It will. Give it time. Collier paused. Sarah and I would like you to come to dinner this weekend, just to celebrate. I'd like that. Good. And Aaron, your father would be proud. Aaron's vision blurred. Thank you, James. The sentencing hearing was held on a cold morning 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed again. Families of the victims, reporters, hospital staff, both current and former. Aaron sat between Collier and Grant, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The judge, the same woman who'd denied Rourke bail, reviewed the case with the kind of measured precision that suggested she'd spent considerable time with the evidence. Mr. Rourke, she said, you were entrusted with the health and safety of vulnerable people. You violated that trust repeatedly and systematically, prioritizing profit over human life. 3 people died as a direct result of your policies. Others were harmed, and when confronted, you attempted to destroy the person who tried to stop you. Rourke stood, his orange jumpsuit wrinkled, his face hollow. He looked nothing like the man who'd smiled at board meetings. Do you have anything to say before sentencing? The judge asked. Rourke's lawyer whispered something to him. Rourke shook his head and spoke, his voice barely audible. I dedicated my life to health care. I never intended for anyone to be harmed. The judge's expression didn't change. Intent is irrelevant when the outcome is death. This court sentences you to 18 years in federal prison on the manslaughter charges. to run consecutively with 10 years for fraud and 5 years for assault. Total sentence, 33 years. No parole eligibility for 15 years. The gavel fell. Rourke's knees buckled. The marshals caught him, guiding him toward the side door. As he passed Aaron's row, he didn't look at her. He looked at the floor, broken and defeated. Aaron watched him disappear through the door. She felt no triumph, just exhaustion and the quiet certainty that it was finally over. Outside, Catherine Marsh gave a statement to the press. Aaron stood to the side with the other nurses, letting Marsh handle the cameras. But one reporter broke through, microphone extended. "Ms. Caldwell, how does it feel to see justice served?" Aaron looked at the camera, then at the families standing nearby. David Brennan, Margaret Hines' daughter, Thomas Ridley's son, people who'd lost loved ones to policies designed to maximize profit. "It feels necessary," she said quietly, "but it doesn't bring anyone back." "What's next for you?" "I'm going back to work. There are more hospitals that need oversight, more policies that need changing, more people who need someone to stand up for them." "Are you afraid it'll happen again? That you'll face retaliation?" Aaron thought about the parking garage, the threats, the fear that had nearly consumed her. Then she thought about Diane Foster, alive because Rachel Winters had refused to stay silent, about Samantha Park in Charleston, gathering evidence, about all the nurses and doctors and staff who'd reached out in the weeks since the story broke, asking how to report what they were seeing. "I'm not afraid anymore," Aaron said, "and that's the point." The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Civil lawsuits were filed against Harborline by patient families. The hospital's board was completely replaced. New administrators were brought in with a mandate to rebuild from the ground up. Federal oversight was imposed for 3 years. The interim CEO, who'd continued Rourke's policies, was convicted of conspiracy and sentenced to 8 years. Harborline Medical Center itself was sold to a larger hospital network that immediately implemented sweeping reforms. Aaron's nursing license was not only reinstated but publicly cleared with a formal apology from the state board, and Tideway Regional's patient safety advocate program became a model. Within 6 months, 12 hospitals across Georgia and South Carolina had created similar positions. Aaron trained 3 of the new advocates herself. One was Lila, who left the ICU to take the role at a hospital in Atlanta. Another was a physician from Charleston, Dr. Samantha Park, who'd reported the violations at Riverside Medical and survived the backlash. The federal investigation there was ongoing. The third was Rachel Winters, the nurse who'd called about Diane Foster. She'd been fired from Harborline for insubordination, but hired immediately by Tideway. On a Saturday morning, 3 months after the sentencing, Aaron stood in the small conference room at Tideway Regional, looking at the 15 incident reports spread across the table. She'd flagged 3 for immediate review, all involving medication errors in the pediatric unit. Dr. Lyle appeared in the doorway. "Found something?" "Maybe. I want to audit the medication reconciliation process. I think there's a gap in the double-check protocol." "Do it." "And Aaron?" He smiled. "You're good at this." "I learned from experience. The hard way. The only way that mattered." That afternoon, Aaron drove to the Collier house for dinner. Sarah had made pot roast, and the house smelled like home. They ate at the kitchen table, conversation flowing easily. Sarah's book club drama, James's volunteer work with veteran services, Aaron's latest audit findings. After dinner, Sarah brought out a small box. "This came for you today, forwarded from your old address." Aaron opened it carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a small pin, a white caduceus on a blue background, the symbol of Military Medical Corps. The note was handwritten. "Ms. Caldwell, I served as a Navy corpsman with your father, David Caldwell, in the late 1990s. He was one of the finest medics I ever knew, skilled, compassionate, and absolutely fearless when it came to protecting his patients. I read about what you did at Harborline. Your father used to say that the hardest part of medicine wasn't the emergencies. It was standing up when everyone else sat down. He'd be so proud of you. This pin was his. I kept it after he passed, but I think you should have it now. Wear it, and remember, courage runs in your family. Senior Chief Michael Torres, USN, Retorni." Aaron held the pin, her hands shaking. She'd never seen it before. Never knew her father had given it to someone. Sarah's hand covered hers. He was right, you know. Your father would be proud. Erin pinned it to her jacket, right over her heart. That night, alone in her apartment, Erin stood at the window looking out at the city. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Former Harborline CFO. Sentenced to 12 years. Federal probe expands to 3 more hospitals. She read the article. The investigation had uncovered similar patterns at facilities across the region. More indictments were expected. More whistleblowers were coming forward. The silence was breaking everywhere. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Caldwell? A young man's voice, nervous. My name is Jason Lee. I'm a pharmacist at Memorial Health in Augusta. I've been seeing medication discrepancies that don't add up, and I think someone's diverting drugs. I don't know who to trust, and I saw what you did, and I need help. Erin sat down, pulling out a notepad. Tell me everything. She listened, took notes, and when Jason finished, she gave him the same advice she'd given Samantha Park. Document everything. Contact the authorities. Don't stay silent. Will it get better? Jason asked quietly. After I report it? Erin thought about the parking garage, the trials, the months of fear. She thought about Diane Foster, alive and recovering. About the hospitals implementing new safeguards. About the patients who'd never know they'd been saved because someone had finally refused to look away. It gets harder first, she said honestly, but then it gets better. And more importantly, it gets right. After Jason hung up, Erin sat in the quiet of her apartment, the pin on her jacket catching the light. She thought about the signal her father had taught her, the moment at the airport when she'd raised her hand and bet everything on a stranger's honor, the choice to speak when silence would have been safer. She'd lost so much, her job, her home, her sense of safety, but she'd gained something too, purpose, clarity, the knowledge that when the moment came she hadn't backed down. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Grant. Another hospital CEO just reached out to me, says he wants to implement a patient safety advocate program before the feds come knocking. I told him to call you. Change is happening, Erin. You started something. Erin typed back, we started something, all of us. She set the phone down and walked to the mirror. The woman looking back was thinner than she'd been 6 months ago, with shadows under her eyes that hadn't fully faded. But she was standing straight, clear-eyed, unbroken. Her father's pin gleamed over her heart. She thought about all the people she'd never meet who were safer now because someone had finally turned on the lights. The patients discharged when they were actually ready. The families who'd never received the call that their loved one had died from preventable negligence. The nurses and doctors who could finally report problems without fear of retaliation. The system wasn't fixed, not completely. Maybe it never would be, but it was better. And tomorrow she'd make it better still. Erin turned away from the mirror and sat at her small kitchen table, opening her laptop. She had 3 incident reports to review for Monday, a training session to prepare for the new advocate in Macon, and a call scheduled with a reporter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about the expanding federal investigation. Her calendar was full. Her purpose was clear. And for the first time in months, when she thought about the future, she didn't feel fear. She felt ready. 6 months later, Erin stood on a stage at the National Patient Safety Conference in Washington, D.C., addressing a room of 300 healthcare administrators, nurses, physicians, and regulators. The podium felt surreal, the audience attentive in a way that suggested they were actually listening. 18 months ago, she began, her voice steady, I was a nurse who found evidence of systematic fraud and patient endangerment. I reported it to my CEO. He assaulted me, destroyed my career, and tried to silence me permanently. The room was silent. But he failed. Because I had evidence. Because other people found the courage to speak up. And because one person, a Navy admiral I'd never met, recognized a signal and chose to help. She paused, finding Admiral Collier in the 3rd row. He nodded once, his expression proud. The system that allowed Harborline to prioritize profit over patients isn't unique. It's replicated in hospitals across the country. But it can be changed. It is being changed. Because people are refusing to stay silent. She clicked to the next slide, showing the logo of the Patient Safety Advocate Network, an organization that had formed in the wake of the Harborline case. We now have patient safety advocates in 47 hospitals across 12 states. We're training more every month, and we're seeing results. Incident reports are being investigated instead of buried. Policies are being revised. Patients are being protected. Another slide. Photos of Lila, Claire, Jordan, Rachel, Samantha. These are some of the people who stood up when it mattered. They lost jobs, faced threats, endured retaliation, but they didn't back down. And because of them, people are alive today who wouldn't be otherwise. She looked out at the audience. If you're in this room and you've seen something wrong, if you know policies are harming patients, if you've been told to stay quiet, if you're afraid of what speaking up will cost you, I want you to know something. Erin's voice strengthened. You're not alone. The cost of silence is always higher than the cost of truth, and there are people ready to stand with you. She gave them the contact information for the Patient Safety Advocate Network, the federal hotline for healthcare fraud, and 3 legal organizations that provided support for whistleblowers. When she finished, the applause was long and genuine. Afterward, people lined up to speak with her. A nurse from Oregon who'd been documenting medication errors. A physician from Texas who'd been threatened for reporting unsafe staffing ratios. A hospital administrator from Michigan who wanted to implement the advocate program before problems emerged. Erin spoke with each of them, taking notes, making referrals, offering encouragement. Admiral Collier appeared as the crowd thinned. Hell of a speech. I was terrified. Didn't show, he smiled. Sarah wanted me to remind you, dinner at our place tomorrow night. No excuses. I'll be there. Good, because we have something to give you. The next evening, Erin arrived at the Collier house to find not just James and Sarah, but Lila, Claire, Jordan, Detective Grant, Catherine Marsh, and Dr. Lyle all gathered in the living room. Sarah handed her a wrapped package. Open it. Inside was a framed photo, the moment at the airport captured by someone's phone. Erin raising her hand in the signal. Admiral Collier standing, his attention locked on her. The moment everything changed. Below the photo was a plaque. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to let fear have the final word. In recognition of Erin Caldwell's bravery, integrity, and unwavering commitment to patient safety, you showed us what it means to stand up when everyone else sits down. It was signed by everyone in the room. Erin's vision blurred. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Grant said. Just keep doing what you're doing. Lila stepped forward. Because of you, I'm not afraid anymore. None of us are. Claire nodded. You showed us how to fight back. Jordan added quietly, and you showed us we could win. Dr. Lyle raised his glass. To Erin, who reminded us all why we went into healthcare in the first place. They drank, they ate, they told stories, and for the first time in over a year, Erin felt something she'd almost forgotten. Peace. Late that night, back in her apartment, Erin hung the framed photo on the wall beside her desk. She stood back, looking at it, the moment of decision, frozen in time. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ms. Caldwell, my name is Dr. Lisa Hammond. I'm a surgeon at Pacific General in Seattle. I think my hospital is doing what Harborline did. I need help. Please. Erin looked at the photo on the wall, at her father's pin on her jacket, at the incident reports waiting on her desk. She picked up her phone and typed back. Tell me everything. You're not alone. Then she sat down, pulled out a fresh notepad, and got to work. Because the fight wasn't over. It would never be completely over. But every hospital that changed, every patient who survived because someone spoke up, every person who found the courage to refuse silence, that was victory. And Erin Caldwell, former victim, current advocate, forever her father's daughter, was just getting started.